Brighton, Mass. The good news for Tuukka Rask on Friday is that there was no dark, quiet room required for the Bruins goaltender when he reported to the Warrior Ice Arena practice facility for treatment for his concussion. Instead, the Bruins goalie got going on the concussion protocol after getting steamrolled by Anders Bjork at practice on Wednesday morning and started the road back to recovery from his first concussion suffered at the NHL level. In the further good news department, Bruins backup netminder Anton Khudobin stepped up in Rask's absence and stopped 26 of 29 shots in a winning effort over the Vancouver Canucks on Thursday night. More so now, Khudobin has twice as many wins as Rask and half as many starts in the opening 2 weeks of the season. That's certainly good for the Russian backup that stumbled out of the starting gate last season, but has really fortified his spot early this year with a strong training camp followed by a .928 save percentage and 2.16 goals against average this year. I've been there before. I've played many games in a row before in the AHL and the NHL, so it's the same routine. It's just harder, to be honest, when you're playing one game every 2 weeks or something, said Khudobin. I'll talk to goalie Bob about what I did good or bad, get ready for practice, stretch it out and warm it up, go get it at practice and get ready for the games. That's in stark contrast to Rask, who has a pair of losses to the worst team in the NHL last season, the Colorado Avalanche, and a defeat out in Las Vegas, where he was out-dueled by Bruins cast-off Malcolm Subban. The defense hasn't been particularly good in front of him in those games, and the team only scored a total of 4 goals in Rask's 3 losses, but the All-Star netminder was also far from sharp with an .882 save percentage to start the season. The home loss to Colorado, in particular, was a poor performance from Rask, where he buried his team with an early deficit once a couple of soft goals by him in the first period. Compounding the lack of quality play from Rask was his odd choice to cease talking about team performance with the media following the loss to the Golden Knights. I just try to go out there and give us a chance to win every night. That's what I'm focused on. I'm not going to comment anymore on team play that much, said Rask after the Sunday loss in Vegas. We can just talk about goaltending. That's just the way it is. Sorry. It certainly sounded and felt like Rask was directed to only talk about his own play by somebody higher up in the Bruins organization, and it was that kind of a development rather than the Bruins goalie passive-aggressively dissing his teammates. But that kind of directive from the organization would also speak to some pre-existing friction between Rask and his teammates, where past criticism has perhaps rubbed some of them the wrong way. It felt that way when Rask and David Krejci spoke about things in a tense dressing room in Las Vegas following last weekend's loss, and it felt that way late last season when the Finnish goalie stayed home in Boston while watching Khudobin win one of the biggest games of the season in Brooklyn against the Islanders. At times in the past, something hasn't always felt quite right about the dynamic between Rask and the rest of the Bruins, and it's not a particularly good sign that both parties seem to already be headed down that path just 5 games into this season. All of this makes for some very interesting timing with the Anders Bjork collision into Rask that knocked him for a loop, and has now opened the door wide for Khudobin to start a few games in a row. Should Khudobin play well and continue to backstop a winning hockey team playing hard in front of him, it will make for a much tougher goalie decision than some might anticipate. Rask is clearly the better goaltender in terms of talent, upside, resume and accomplishments over the last 8 years, but the question becomes how much is that offset by the Bruins team potentially playing a better brand of hockey with Khudobin between the pipes. Maybe it's because Khudobin is the backup and the Bruins are trying to play tighter defense in front of him, but it's hard to argue the fact that Boston seems to play a smarter, stronger game when the backup gets the call. That's what I'm there for, but at the same time, I wasn't thinking, oh, maybe Rask is going to get hurt and he's not going to play the next few games. I'm not thinking that way, definitely, said Khudobin. I was just focusing on my practice. Whatever coach is going to tell me after the practice, then I will keep moving from that point. The best-case scenario for the Bruins is that Khudobin plays good, strong, winning hockey in Rask's absence, and that in turn lights a fire under the number 1 goaltender after he looked fairly laissez-faire in his first few games this season. That's what everybody saw out of Rask late last season when he was called out by the Bruins coaching staff and challenged by a red-hot Khudobin pushing for some big game starts. Perhaps that is exactly the kind of collective kick to the hockey pants that's needed for Rask to start carrying the Bruins team once he gets healthy again. A deeper question, however, would involve asking how much longer the Bruins want to hitch their wagons to a $7 million a year goalie that needs to mentally recharge his batteries from time to time, and who begins to wilt performance-wise if he makes more than $5,560 start in an NHL season. Members of the Rask fan club will point to his career .922 save percentage, but it's been 3 years since he's been able to consistently reach that level of performance. The older Rask, 30, gets, the more baggage is getting added on with a performance level that's dropped from his Vezina Trophy winning days. Some of that is clearly about the defense getting a makeover in front of him, but it's also about Rask just not always being as consistently good when Boston needs him most in the big games. Khudobin certainly wouldn't be the long-term answer for the Bruins, and the jury is out on whether or not Zane McIntyre has a future in the NHL. Zagali. So there's no long-term solution if they suddenly decided to go away from Rask for any reason. But if this humble hockey writer was coaching the Bruins and Khudobin goes on a winning tear over the next few weeks, a healthy Rask wouldn't automatically be handed his number one workload upon his return, and it would be a couple of goalies splitting time to decide who wants it more. That kind of situation might not be up to goaltender controversy standards at this early point in the season, but there's nothing wrong with making Rask grind for it a little when he does come back after breezing through some early season losses.